another episode in our preparing for the 2025 Caribbean Hurricane Season webinar series. My name is Denise Murillo, and I am from the CARICOM Secretariat, and I will be one of the moderators for today. I will be joined by Ms. Adeli Ramos. This webinar is brought to you through collaboration of key regional partners. I can't miss them. We have Sedima, CAFSA, CARDI, CRFM, who's with us today, joining, and FAO and AICA. Our goal today is to equip you with practical strategies that can be incorporated into your disaster preparedness plans, specifically for fisheries and aquaculture sector. As you know, fish is a vital source of protein for us and is important income in our region, especially for coastal and rural communities that rely heavily on fisheries and aquaculture. Any type of disruption, whether from hurricanes, flooding, or climate-related events, can severely impact food availability, drive up prices, and threaten the livelihoods of many. Given the region's dependence on fish for both nutrition and economic stability, strengthening disaster preparedness in this sector is essential to safeguarding food security and community resilience. In our previous session, we explored practical strategies for managing livestock in preparation for the upcoming hurricane season. We highlighted the importance of documenting your assets, tagging animals for identification, and conducting pre-season health checks with your veterinarian. These, along with other essentials actions, form a critical part of a comprehensive disaster preparedness plan for livestock owners. Today, we continue that conversation. We encourage you to submit your questions. I ask those on Zoom to please remain muted and use the chat feature to indicate your questions. Those using the social media, you may also put your question in the chat there as well. We will address them as the time would allow during the dedicated question and answer segment of the session. Following that, we have a moderated segment, which Ms. Adeli Ramos will take us through. So let's get started. This morning, wherever you are, our first speaker this morning is Mr. Peter Murray. And he has a Master of Philosophy degree in biology and a diploma in international environmental law. He has been senior most fisheries biologist at St. Lucia's Department of Fisheries, data management officer at the OECS Fisheries Unit, and senior program officer at the OECS Secretariat, now Commission, where he has published on planning for disaster management and vulnerability reduction in the fisheries sector of Caribbean states and coordinated training in post-disaster macro socioeconomic assessments, including for the fisheries sector. Peter has served as program manager at the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanism Secretariat, in which capacity he supervised the development of the CRFM Model Fisheries Disaster and Risk Management Plan. He is currently advisor, fishery management and development at the CRFM Secretariat, and has also been involved in carrying out post-disaster damage and loss assessment of the fisheries sector. So we'd like to welcome Mr. Peter Murray at this time.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I hope you are hearing me okay. And I hope you will soon be able to see my screen once I can manage to share that. We've had some challenges along the way, but let's see how it goes. So let us share here. Hopefully you are seeing my screen and it is in presentation mode, I hope. Please confirm, someone.
Yes, it's in presentation mode.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Well, I'm not going to say who I am again. That's already been said. So I'm going to start off by trying to take a look at the big picture. The whole idea of planning, the whole idea of preparedness, there's a broader context that I think is important that we set. So that broad context is actually grounded in the Caribbean Community Common Fisheries Policy. And the policy itself um, draws on the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, which we as CARICOM member countries and institutions are, in a sense, bound. A number of things feed into that discussion. You have the Comprehensive Disaster Management Framework, you have the Lilienthal Declaration and the regional framework in terms of climate change. You have the CARICOM implementation strategy. And in a sense, emanating out of that, um, you have the Fisheries Disaster Risk Management Climate Change Adaptation Strategy and Action Plan, which we'll talk about a bit more. And then this feeds into the national effort. So it's basically, we take an approach of subsidiarity where you have the bigger picture and you zoom down to action at the national level. Speaking to that, I think that big picture, I mentioned already the Caribbean Community Common Fisheries Policy. The policy has a number of protocols which allow for implementation. It's a broad level policy document, but operationalization, implementation is facilitated through a number of protocols. And protocol number 2 is the protocol on climate change adaptation and disaster risk management in the fisheries and aquaculture under, of course, the policy. And it was actually approved in the 8th special meeting of the Ministerial Council of the CRFM, which met in October of 2018. But there are a number of things. The first thing is the goal. Overall, it's ensuring development of a sector that is resilient to climate change, ocean acidification, and enhanced, importantly, through the comprehensive disaster management. Remember my second slide, I actually pointed to that linkage. And of course, the sustainable use of marine and other aquatic living resources and ecosystem. The objective of the protocol is to support the member states in adapting to the impacts of climate change, to build resilience in the sector, livelihood assets and ecosystems through, among other things, research and integrated adaptive planning and policy development, awareness, capacity building, and regulatory reforms. I think it's important to look at some of the basic principles because these actually take us from that big picture down to the national level. The first important thing is taking proactive action. The overall policy framework is not to sit back and be reactive. When things happen, then you do something. Proactive action is a basic underlying principle of the protocol on disaster risk management and on what we do. Of course, the precautionary principle is an important one, that big picture. And basically, not because I don't have a lot of data means I do nothing. You have to be in a position where you reasonably suspect that there's something needs to be done, and so you take the necessary precautions. This means that you must be flexible. There must be flexibility in and sort of a life to the process and a life to the protocol. Importantly, it must be participatory. We have to be involved. It is we thing. It's not somebody over there saying that we're doing this thing. It's our thing. I have already alluded to the question of subsidiarity, where while we do what we do, it happens at the lowest level of competence. In other words, the national level, or maybe the community level, maybe the village level, and the individual level. And that is the approach that we take in looking at that big picture of the protocol on climate change. So let's zoom in now to the national level. We started at the big picture. Now we're zooming in to the national disaster risk management and planning for disaster risk management. And in 20 November of 2020, under the CC4 Fish Policy project, SOMIS and FAO put together a policy brief on the whole issue of disaster risk management. And it's instructive. It has some very useful perspectives that support us in looking at how we go about managing, how we go about dealing, how we do preparing for the risks that can come out of disasters in the region. There's some key messages that actually up in that brief, and I commend it to your attention. We probably, if you want, by writing to the secretary at CARICOM, we can probably make available to you copies of that brief, which I think still has value. It highlights the the DRM cycle. It summarizes some of the initiatives that are ongoing in 2020, and it actually presents supporting policy action. So it's a very useful framework to zoom us in down to the national level. There's also, in 2013, the CRFM developed a strategy and action plan for climate change adaptation and disaster risk management. And in 2020, it was updated. The original strategy and action plan responded to the direction of CARICOM heads of government to use regional delivery frameworks as platforms to address climate change adaptation, and in the context of this discussion, disaster risk management. Both the original action plan and the updated version had, again, a participatory approach, a consultative process where CARICOM member states were involved in developing it. And both versions built on the regional policy framework that I've already alluded to, contained in the regional framework for achieving development resistance to climate change, which is I suppose you could say housed in the 5 Cs, in a sense. But it was designed to significantly increase the resilience of the region. So that is, again, part of that policy framework. And basically, there are a number of I suppose you could say, supporting perspectives in this bigger picture. But for us, we're looking more in terms of the actual mechanisms. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that. We're zooming in, coming out of that, mindful of that, thinking of that. The CRFM Secretariat developed a model disaster preparedness and risk management plan for the fisheries and aquaculture sector of its member states. It really emerged out of the necessity to have a framework that would advise regional partners on the measures to be taken to enhance our ability to manage all disasters at a regional and national level, with, of course, special emphasis on, our hometown, as it were, fisheries and aquaculture sector. The 4 main sections of the plan present the policies and framework of disaster risk management within the sector. And the final part provides a framework for national guiding principles and the scope and the response and the recovery actions and the responsibilities. This graphic kind of gives you an idea of the 4 phases, as it were, the 4 aspects of the MFDRMP. And we're talking about preparedness, so I'll focus now on the thematic area disaster preparedness. Basically, a number of outcomes we seek to achieve in this model plan. One is, of course, increased level of awareness and enhanced capacity. The awareness building, this is what we are doing today. That's part of seeking to increase the awareness of our communities, fishing communities and other communities. And hopefully, coming out of the preparedness framework, communities will be better equipped with the necessary skills and capability to cope with the impacts of disasters. This would lead to increased disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation capacity of local officers. Again, subsidiarity, zooming down, coming down to the lower level, as it were, the ground level, the beach level, the local offices and operation centers, and to develop and implement comprehensive national and local preparedness policies, plans, and systems. And strengthening the partnerships and coordination among all key fisheries and aquaculture sector players and stakeholders. So a template, actually, in that model plan, there's an appendix which actually has a template for the member states to adopt and insert the relevant information pertaining to their country, zooming into the national level. And at the time when we did this, we did, as it were, a customized model draft plan for Belize as a demonstration of how it could be utilized. And we commend that to your attention, in that there may be considerations at the country level in carrying this whole process forward. Just to give you an idea from the Belize perspective, you'll notice a number of parts in this here. The basic plan moving right down to functional plans, again moving down in a subsidiarity-oriented thinking. But importantly, you notice that all of these individual perspectives are linked because it is a comprehensive package. We are on board with the comprehensive disaster management framework. In terms of the disaster preparedness, in the Belize example, I just try to speak to some of the outcomes here and the lead agencies in terms of their responsibilities. So the Fisheries Department and the NEMO would support increased level of awareness and enhanced capacity. The NEMO, the Ministry responsible for Human Development, Social Transformation, Education, Science, Technology, they have a role to play in ensuring that the communities are equipped with necessary skills and capability. The NEMO and the Fisheries Division to work in terms of increasing disaster risk reduction and the capacity at all the levels. Similarly, they would work in the Belize draft plan towards developing and implementing the comprehensive preparedness and responses systems and so forth. And again, strengthening the partnerships and coordination. So with all of that, that is the big picture. That is the big picture where we took the Caribbean Community Common Fisheries Policy and we came down to the national level using the Belize example. There's one thing that it would be remiss of me if I didn't mention, and the issue of early warning and emergency response. That is, I think, sine qua non in terms of what we do. We have to look at that. We had actually developed something called the Fisheries Early Warning and Emergency Response System, which took us down to that ground level. A number of modules. It was a phone-based system. Took us down to the ground level. What do you do to prepare before the emergency? What do you do to respond during the emergency? What do you do to recover after the emergency? It has now been through an MOU with SIDIMA. It is now housed, and as far as I know, it operationally it's supposed to be kept going through SIDIMA. So that again is something that people may want to look at. I think that's it for me. I wanted to be just to give you that big picture viewpoint. I don't want to go into a lot of detail because I think the crux of what we're talking would be the experiences of the fishers that the next speaker will lead us through, and then zooming in on some best practices which my colleague June Masters will do. So with that, thank you very much. If there are any urgent questions, I'm sure that the facilitator will give me an opportunity to say something. In the meantime, let me stop sharing. And then that's
Thank
it.
you.
I will.
Thank you, Mr.
There we
Maury.
go.
So our next presenter is Mr. Adrian Laruda. He's a veteran fisher and proponent for fisheries. He's from Bahamas. He was born in Bahamas in 1964. Adrian followed his grandfather's footsteps with a deep love for the sea and fishing, where they would purchase the fish to resell from a mobile van. In 1984, Adrian and three friends purchased a 40-foot Defender fishing boat, laying the foundation for a successful partnership. While business was flourishing, there were many underlying issues such as unfair trading. On this basis, he organized with legacy fishers in 2009 and formed the Bahamas Commercial Fishers Alliance, serving as its secretary and later as elected president. He was part of the team which established the Caribbean network of national fisherfolk organizations, for which he later became vice chairman in 2015 and then chairman in 2020. A member of civil society, he has participated in a number of projects in the Bahamas with emphasis on fisheries and climate action, including an EDF Bahamas hurricane modeling project. The time is now yours, Mr. Laruda. Share with us. We are listening.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, wherever you are. Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us as I represent the CNFO and the Bahamas Commercial Fishers Alliance. I want to thank Mr. Peter Murray, previous speaker, who spoke to the big picture in terms of hurricane preparedness and what we should do, and particularly the Caribbean Common Fisheries policies and the early warning systems. I'm sure that information we can always find out there because it's work that's been going on now for some time. As was said, I'm Adrian Lirota. I'm president of the Bahamas Commercial Fishers Alliance and the past chairman of the Caribbean Network of Fisherfolk Organizations. The CNFO, as you would know, represents all of the CARICOM member states, all of the countries within the CARICOM, within CARICOM. As you can see from this map, we are broad and wide, and we are intending at some point to bring on board Haiti, as we just had a new cohort or a new organization actually aligned with CNFO, which is the National Fisherfolk Organization from the British Virgin Islands.
We're not
Introduction. The Atlantic hurricane season runs from June 1st to November 30th. In 2024, we saw 11 hurricanes. 5 of them were major storms, and with 2024 being the most costly year from hurricane damage that's been on record. 2024 also was the first year since 2019 to feature multiple Category 5 hurricanes in the same year. 2025 is predicted to have a 60% chance of an above normal season with 13 to 19 named storms, 10 of which are expected to become hurricanes and 5 will potentially develop into a Category 5 storm. The IMF estimates that hurricanes caused roughly $52 billion in damages to the region to date. And some losses, actually, a lot of the losses go unreported. So I'm sure that $52 billion could swell to as much as $100 billion to date. These estimates, however, cannot quantify the loss of human lives and the social impact of these devastating hurricanes. While some countries are more vulnerable to storms than others, climate change effects has put the entire region at a more likely risk of having a severe storm. Historically, it's not on my presentation, but I would just say it. Historically, there were some countries in the region that were at low risk for hurricanes, Barbados, for example, and those countries in the lower Antilles. But now, because of climate change and what we're seeing now, the entire region is completely and extremely vulnerable to suffering from massive storms. In hurricane preparedness, hurricane preparation generally involves 4 stages: pre-season preparation, monitoring and alerts, storm time actions, and post-storm recovery. In the pre-season, fishers are always reminded to secure their assets, know where you would put your vessel and equipment. If you have to evacuate, know your evacuation plan, where you will go, including how to get there safely. Assemble essential supplies like food, water, first aid kits, medications, and battery-powered radios and canned goods. However, review your insurance policies if you have it, and secure all important documents in watertight containers. And just to add on this and build on this, what we have been saying in CNFO, we've actually been exploring survival kits for our fishers in the region that will be branded specifically for CNFO. So that's something that's coming hopefully soon. The next phase of monitoring and alerts. Monitor weather forecasts and official alerts from official sources. Be aware of different alert levels, example, the hurricane watch, hurricane warnings, and their implications. Rely on stable sources of information and not someone from down the road, because very often we rely on information from our neighbors and we rely on the informal information sources. We always encourage our fishers not to do that. And actually, that would have been tied to Mr. Murray's information on the early warning system in terms of hurricanes and other disasters. Storm actions: evacuate if ordered. Follow instructions from authorities. Protect yourself by staying away from coastlines and moving bodies of water. Turn off electricity and gas if you need to. It's important that fishers understand, and people understand it, people in general understand, to stay away from moving bodies of water. As we've seen over the last 2 years or so, particularly in 2024, some of the islands, even outside of the hurricane season, they've been having severe rains, severe weather conditions, mudslides, flooding, some dangerous situations. So we're always going to ask our people, particularly our fishers, to stay away from moving bodies of water. Post-storm recovery. This is very important because we often think that when there's quiet, that's the time for us to go and explore and venture out and see what's happening with the storm. Wait until a complete all clear is given. That is, it is a common hazard for people to venture out during the calm or the eye of a storm. Do not venture out alone. Fishers should form groups or recovery teams that will assist in recovering lost boats. And an important recovery tool is for vessels is fitting your vessels with VMS locators. So that if they ever break away from moorings, they can be located via GPS tagging. And what we've been trying to do here with the Department of Marine Resources was implement a plan that's coming again, developing, to have VMS, which is a vessel monitoring systems, installed on all of our fishing boats, the entire fishing fleet. So that's a plan. It's in the works, but it's work in progress. Now to the Bahamas experience. And as everyone would know, the Bahamas suffered a devastating hurricane in 2019. That was Hurricane Dorian. So I'm just going to speak about that just for a bit. The Bahamas is one of those countries that is more probable to be hit by a hurricane and was hit by 18 hurricanes in the past 10 years, with 2019's Hurricane Dorian being the most destructive in recent times. However, it was not the most destructive in history. The Inter-American Development Bank put an estimate damage after all of the impacts from Hurricane Dorian at $3.4 billion, which amounted to over 1/4 of the gross domestic product of the Bahamas. They reported that the $3.4 billion impact was divided as 72% from damage to buildings and infrastructure, 21% in losses, total losses to, again, buildings and infrastructure and other tenant services, vehicles, et cetera, and 7% in additional costs. And when they said additional costs, they're basically speaking about the cost of having to place people that were displaced as a result of storms. Losses to the fisheries sector was estimated at $11 million and affected about 15% of the Bahamas fishing fleet. In Dorian, 9,210 homes were lost, displacing 29,000 people, some of whom, to date, are still without permanent homes. Before Hurricane Dorian, there was 2015 Hurricane Joaquin, a Category 4 storm that caused significant damage and had a devastating impact on the fishing industry. This storm developed overnight from a tropical depression to a major hurricane. The folks in the southern islands of the Bahamas that were affected by Hurricane Joaquin, they went to bed on one night aware that there was a tropical depression approaching their islands. Later on in the morning, as it developed, the storm intensified to a Category 4 storm. The resulting damage was estimated at over $100 million in property, of which about $20 million was to the fishing fleet. And those estimates come from the number of boats that were lost, commercial fishing fleets, because fishers did not really have the opportunity to secure their vessels because the information was that we were going to be impacted by a tropical depression and not a hurricane. As you can see from this slide, we have here two images. One of the island of the Grand Bahama, and before Hurricane Dorian, that's the image on the left. On the right is the image post-Hurricane Dorian, which was 2 days after the storm. And as you can see, the level of flooding basically flooded in this part of the island, basically flooded 60% to almost 70% of the island. It was a very destructive storm. These are other images from Grand Bahama and Abaco. And you can see here, there are a lot more images showing the fishing fleet, but again, a lot of vessels were lost in this. Not a lot of them commercial fishing vessels, but so, there was not a great, well, the loss to recreational vessels was far greater than that to the commercial fishing vessels. But it's just to show you the devastation from flooding as a result of Hurricane Dorian. These are images from Abaco and Grand Bahama. Lessons learned. When considered, the question, what have we learned, is kind of open-ended. And I would say open-ended because it's difficult to finitely predict the damage that one would suffer as a result of a hurricane. So the best thing that we can do is build stronger. But again, what is strong enough? Hurricanes are happening more frequently and of greater intensity. So when is strong going to be strong enough? And in our way of life, how is that impacting us? What we have learned, though, is fisherfolk are often the victim of other successes, and by that I mean coastal development that alters the natural environment, almost always negatively impacting fisherfolk, either through displacement or loss of use of coastal areas. In the history of fishing, and this is kind of very important, in the history of fishing, fisherfolk use mangrove inlets and creeks as secure places to put their boats, where mangroves have not been decimated to make way for. Now we have mangroves being decimated to make way for marinas, and creeks are being co-opted as some part of a development of barring fishers from using or accessing these spaces. In all of our islands, particularly all of our islands, there were always creeks and mangroves where fishermen were able to store their boats. And as we all know, mangroves are nature's natural barrier against storms. But with development, mangroves are being removed and creeks are being closed in. People are building marinas, they're building seawalls, which, yes, they provide, then they're nice, but I don't know how much protection they provide in severe storm surge, but that's what's happening. Fisherfolk must understand that our livelihood is our livelihood, and only us can protect it. We must not rely solely on governments and charity to protect us. We must right our ships by investing in life-saving equipment and insurance, because a lot of fishers do not have insurance. Mind you, some of the assets are uninsurable, but it still doesn't mean you should not have some type of insurance. And as a fisher, it is better to have taken measures to be safe and not need these measures and not need it than to have not done anything and be in need. And on this, what we find is often after every storm, we go through the same process of having to go to the governments begging for assistance to help us recover from hurricanes, when there were things that we could have done as fishers, things that we must do as fishers to be able to put us back in a position that we may have been in before a storm. These are the things that fishers themselves must pay attention to and fishers themselves must do. We know about all of the Caribbean disaster insurance programs. We know about all of these things, but have they been serving us? They have not been completely serving us well, so we must now begin to have the discussion, long overdue, have the discussion on what should we as fishers do for ourselves. So on this, my very short presentation, I want to say thank you very much. Again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Larwood. Our next presenter is Miss June Masters. She's somewhat familiar on this webinar, so we welcome her back. She's a CRFM Statistics and Information Analyst, and she will be taking us through action steps, what to do when a storm or hurricane threatens to strike. I'd like to invite her to make her presentation, as I am noting the times is now being far spent, and we have another segment, the moderated segment that we need to get into. Just want to just to say something about our speaker here. She has over 24 years of working in the field of fisheries management in the Caribbean, beginning as a fisheries officer at the Jamaica Fisheries Division and culminating at the regional fisheries body, CRFM, where she has worked for the past 15 years as a statistics and information analyst. Ms. June Masters, the time is yours.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
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 Perfect.
All right. Thank you very much. So we have looked at preparedness before, and now we want to look at some actual steps that you can take to make sure that you are secured as a fisher person, whether fisher males or females fishers. So what are these steps? The four that I want to bring to your attention, it's first, number one, it's prepare, prepare, prepare. You cannot stop preparing, and preparation starts from day one. Prepare everything. Prepare yourself for what's going to happen. Prepare your buildings, prepare your vessels, prepare your gears, all your assets that you have. When you purchase, when you are thinking of building as a fisherman, especially a fisher person, fisher folk, especially if you're going to be building in the coastline area, make sure that number one on your list is the thinking that some disaster will happen, hurricanes, storms, bad weather will happen, and you need to be prepared. So have that in mind. As a fisher, prepare yourself for disasters. Number two, always stay informed. Listen to your radios, keep abreast, whatever early warning systems you have. Make sure that you stay tuned and you're following the instructions that are being broadcast and so on. Don't be left behind. So stay informed about the weather, in particular hurricanes, the storms, etc. Because it's not just hurricanes. You could just have a system that caused problem. And when it's clear that a hurricane is about to strike, you should prioritize safety for yourselves and your household. First of all, make sure that you're alive to tell the tale afterwards. So if worse come to worse and you have to run, leave everything, do not hesitate. Make sure that you secure yourself, your household, your family. After that, you take steps to secure your boats, your gears, and so on, and be prepared to evacuate if necessary. I know fishers don't like to evacuate because they say, well, if I leave my stuff behind, somebody will steal it, and so on and so forth. But if you have to do it, please be prepared mentally, physically to evacuate, and do not hesitate to do that. Your life is more important than your gears and everything else. That those you can get back, you can't get back your life. And continue, of course, after the hurricane would have struck and so on, continue to listen out, to keep yourself informed, and begin to think about, and you should have also in your mind, whether written down or just in your mind, what your recovery plan is going to be. Your government, your organization, and so on, they will have pointers for you. And I know sometimes things are beyond your control and you really can't do anything to recover. But even so, have something in your mind what you would do to recover. So start with the first step, prepare. Stay informed, follow instructions, be aware of the risk, make sure you have some insurance in place. That includes that as well. Make your own family emergency plan. And of course, make sure that it's in tandem, it's in line with what is being done nationally. You can get your instructions from your fishery divisions and so on and so forth. Make sure you have your kits available like everybody else. You have some water, so on, you have a safe place to run to, and all of that. Prepare. It starts from day one. Also, it's not just prepare your vessels, your boats, as we discussed before. Make sure things like your moorings, your anchors, your chains, your cables, your ropes, they should be kept in good conditions at all times. Recheck them well in advance before hurricane season. Whenever time you get a chance, double check. Check your mooring lines and so on. And of course, at CRFM, we make sure that we encourage fishers to do these things, to make sure that they keep themselves prepared. Do not venture out when it's clear that you shouldn't. I know some of us fishers, we're die hard and we feel that, we won't die. We have been doing this for years. Nothing can happen, but be careful. Do not do that. Listen and take the necessary precautions. Best practices for securing your boats now. When the actual hurricane, it's said it's coming, it's gonna hit you. Do not disbelieve them. Be careful. Don't take it for granted that it's going to turn. I know we in the Caribbean, fishermen especially, we love to say, oh, it's gonna turn, man, it's not gonna come. No, take the necessary precautions. Right at that stage now, you're going to secure your vessel. Before now, you would have known from your plan whether or not you're going to use dry storage or you're going to use wet storage. If you're going to leave the boat in the water, if you're going to take it out. Dry storage is taking it out and taking it to a safe place, maybe a warehouse or so on. You're taking it out of the water on a trailer and you're carrying it somewhere. Or if you're going to leave it in the water, in that case, you need to know the different steps to secure it in the water. And I do have a lot of them listed here for you. So if not, you can also just remove it to beside your house, especially if the house is near to the coast and there's nothing else you can do. Beside the house is also good. If you have another building further away where you can take it, you can leave it outside as well. But more than likely, you're going to either leave it in the water, you're going to take it out, one of those two. Whichever you do, make sure that you remove the gears and so on. And at the first mention that a hurricane might come, and that is sure to come, take your gears out of the water so that we can prevent ghost fishing. And also you will have them afterwards. Makes sense. Make sure you remove assets from your vessel as well, whatever can be taken off, things that missiles that can fly around, and also these things cost money. So secure them, remove them and secure them, right? If you're going to leave it in the water, if you're going to leave your vessel in the water, there are a number of steps to be taken. I have them all listed here. Of course, you make sure that your moorings, your anchors, your chains, and so on, that they're in good condition. If they're not, and you have time, you should not be running to the hardware at this point. You should have done that already. Make sure you have them ready, right? Make sure your boats are moored in groups if you can. They're rafted. Your bowline must be secured, individually tied to trees, never to the mangroves, tight on the piling or other strong points on land, allowing sufficient slack for the rising tides. Make sure that the stem is similarly secured. Do not tie up parallel to the bank or shoreline. Make sure that the boats assembled in groups, that they're secured and so on. And relatively large vessels that perhaps cannot be secured like that, then if you have time, move it. You can move it away to a safer place, to somewhere where the storm is not going to be. So you start hustle down to St. Lucia maybe, or something like that. If not, then you just have to tie it up according to the instructions that we have here and hope and pray for the best. Aquaculture facility, because we are about aquaculture as well, and I do have a number of steps here. And the first one for aquaculture facility is to make sure that your drains, they're clear, make sure your drain pipes are working, because one of the first thing that will happen is that your ponds, especially how we do it in the Caribbean where we have outdoor ponds, the earthen ponds, they will become flooded and the fish will wash out and you will lose everything. So make sure your drains are secure, they're clean, and they're taking the water away. We can't express how important drain pipe maintenance is when it comes to hurricane. Batten up as best as you can. If you have fish inside, you might have hatchery facilities inside. Batten up as best as you can, and make sure that you have feed and so on in place. Make sure that these things are placed on pallets, they're secured, because after the hurricane, you can imagine you will not be able to get feed very quickly and to get yourself back up and running, and your other equipment that you need to secure. Make sure you have those. After the hurricane, again, clearing debris and making sure you check out everything and make sure you have your system running. Again, remove the dead fish from the pond. Some will die. Remove them and clear your water as best as you can. Whether you whatever you're doing, you turn on back your systems and you get your water either cleared or put in a whole set of different water. Make sure that your water system is up and running afterwards. We share this information with our stakeholders, you, the fishers, anybody who wishes. We do have these things done up in the form of posters you can access online. We have the links there, you can access them. We have videos and so on that can assist you. So where you need more information, please, this presentation will be available. You can look at these and choose what you need and access the links. Our ministerial councils and so on, they also make different statements and preparations, and they have given us instructions. They have requested that the CRFM Secretary establish a structured mechanism to provide post-disaster support to member states, including but not limited to communication and information exchange. And we have things in place So where you need further assistance, be sure to reach out to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, June, for those practical steps and insights. We are now opening for the question and answer segment. I also note a comment here, but from someone in Grenada saying, my philosophy always is this: prior proper planning prevents poor performance. Wow, right? Crofton Stroud Fisheries. Sorry, I hope I said that right, in Grenada. So thank you for that comment. So let's say it again. Prior proper planning prevents poor performance. So let's not forget that. That's a good one. I like that one. We also have a comment here, a question. Why is it the Caribbean disaster management does not include an alert system to notify all folks across the Caribbean in this age of technology? An alert system is very important to the entire Caribbean. So question here, do we have one? Is there one in the making? Is there a plan to have one? Or, well, we don't have Sedima here, so we can't speak. But if we do know, you could share.
If I may jump in on that one.
Sure, go ahead, go there,
Yeah.
Mr. Yeah.
Peter, I already alluded to it. The FEWA system, fisheries, emergency warning, etc., was meant to do and provide exactly that. The challenge, of course, has been operationalizing it. And like you say, a pity Sidima isn't here, they may be able to shed more light on it. But we have actually endeavored to put in place a system of the sort. It's just a matter of seeing how it can become properly operationalized. Thank you.
Very good. All right, another comment here is, this is important information. Is this being simulcast on Fisher's radios or other communication channels? From my end, not that I know of, but we do have a YouTube channel, which, well, this is a live stream, and it will be there on the CARICOM YouTube channel page. So you could go there and go back and see all the sessions that we've had so far. So I don't know if Adeli, you have anything else to add in this regard, but for us, we have our channel with all the webinars on it for future references if necessary. All right, another question here. How can our youth and mature youth get more involved to spread this awareness within our Caribbean communities? How can we play an active role in the academic research space? That's a very good question. Thank you. Who would like to take that one?
I will attempt to give Peter Murray's thoughts, which are not necessarily the viewpoint of the CRFM Secretariat. They are my personal thoughts. And I am reminded of something my father told me a long time ago. He says, when you point a finger forward, there are three more pointing back at you. It is up to all of us. It is up to all of us to play our part in that. The information that has come out of these webinar series can be shared. Each one teach one, as it were. If you're talking about the academic space, maybe there's a need to bring this to academic institutions. You will recall I mentioned in my presentation that a few years back, UWI CERMI, Center for Environmental Management and so forth, had actually been involved and had taken that into their space in terms of they are taken on board and they develop the policy briefs and that sort of thing in collaboration with FAO and the CC4Fish project. So you are quite right, the person who asked the question. There is a need to bring this into the academic space, but it is really up to us as a collective to take this forward. It cannot be any one entity responsible for that. Again, I say that's Peter Murray's opinion and does not necessarily reflect the opinion of the CRFM Secretariat.
Denise, just to follow up on Mr. Murray's comments too, I would like to state that as CNFO, we are and have been working to have a number of programs that focus on youth and by an extension, youth and gender. So there are a number of things that are being done at the CNFO level for that. We are working with the World Forum of Fisher Peoples on youth initiatives. And to like the audience like to praise the audience of the CNFO's Learning Institute, where we have training sessions, and you can go to the CNFO's website to find out when the next the 2025 iteration of the Learning Institute will begin. It is normally in the third and fourth quarter of every year, around November, sometimes October. But those sessions again too also not only we're training fishers about fisheries business, but we're also too concentrating on gender and youth. I know the question was more to youth, so that can be important. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Hi,
Question.
Janine.
Go ahead.
Yes, my apologies. So the question that was raised regarding disseminating this information through more traditional channels, I think is an excellent one, because at the end of the day, there is a significant portion of our target community who will not be online, who will not be engaging through digital and social media platforms. And so we also make an effort to have this information disseminated on the ground, and the Caribbean Network of Fisherfolk organizations plays a very vital role in that regard, as well as the other national fisherfolk organizations in the member states, because they are closely connected with the individuals and the communities on the ground. And so that's the great value in having that relationship, because although we have our offices here in Belize and in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we do have 15 other member states that we need to connect with. And so big up to CNFO and the NFOs for playing an important role in this regard.
All right, great addition there, Adele. All right, so I have another question here. It says, given the increasing frequency of extreme weather events like hurricanes, what multi-layered containment protocols should Caribbean aquaculture facilities implement to prevent accidental spill all over or I'm not seeing the word here,
It's of
or non-native or
species.
invasive species into adjacent lakes and marine ecosystems, particularly addressing both structural safeguards, example, reinforced infrastructure, and biological controls, example, sterilized techniques. So that's their question. This would like to take it. Ms. June?
I think I'll start, and then afterward I'll ask Peter to chime in as well. He's the aquaculture specialist among us. But most member states would have their regulations on aquaculture. So you don't just get up and make your facilities without instructions and safeguards in place from your respective governments. So they will tell you, in terms of how the effluent must be discharged, where it can be discharged, how it can be discharged, and so on. And most of outside of hurricane season, most of the escapees would have been escaping through these, drain pipes and systems. And note that I mentioned how important it was to keep, your drains properly maintained and secured, whether it's hurricane season, yes or no. The next thing that happens is that there usually would be inspections of your aquaculture facilities to make sure that you are abiding by the rules and regulations that your government would have set for such systems. Also, talked about biological controls, example, sterilization techniques, and so on. And in terms of aquaculture, fish for food, like tilapia and so on, most member states would do same sex or sex reversal of of tilapia, so that you're only cultivating males should be. However, it's not a foolproof system. And so, yes, indeed, sometimes if the aquaculture product escape into the wild, then they're able to reproduce and to fill systems and take over and really cause havoc in the natural environment. So what I would say is that government controls have to be in place to make sure that systems that are operating at the national level, that they are following the procedures and that they are keeping the facilities as they should, which would prevent escape. During the hurricane season, all that can, if you are prepared, as we discussed before, and if your fish, they're being maintained at the level they're supposed to be maintained, they're all sterilized, we're operating with just males and females alone, or they're sterilized or something, then you don't have to worry if they escape into the environment. If so, again, the watchword is make sure that you're monitoring, you're checking, you're prepared, you're doing what is right, so that when an emergency comes around, you are 100% secured. Thanks, Peter.
I don't think there's much I could add to what you've said, June. I had been thinking to again note that you made some of the points in your presentation. The question of militating against things like invasive species getting out. I think the question that has to do with how much play you have between the water surface and the top of your pond. It has to do with whether you have proper meshes and so on your drain pipes to ensure that if anything has a tendency to go out, that it is stopped by those drain pipes and so forth. So I think you've alluded to it. There is need, I think, from the engineering perspective, to maybe look a bit more deeply at some of these things. And I don't know, maybe it is a call for some of our other entities, our engineering faculties, for example, in UWI and the other universities, our SERMIs and so forth, to work with us and maybe add some advice in support of what June has already said. But I think the question is an important one that needs to be given consideration. As I have the floor, I receive a comment from the Chief Fisheries Officer of Antigua and Barbuda, who's unable to, he's having internet challenges. So he shared with me some thoughts, and which I've put in the chat. He says that the question of the guidance on removal of fish pots, a lot of instances, the guidance that is out there is for a different type of pot. In the case of our wire mesh fish pots, what some people do, because you're aware how rust works, is in the water, it's underneath there, rust will not set, but once it gets exposed to air, then rust sets in. So what some fishers actually do, interestingly enough, is move it to deeper water where wave action is the wave energy, it tends to be less, and so they are safer there. The problem of that, of course, is retrieving them after, because you don't want to have ghost fishing continuing. So it's a balance, and CFO Antigua pointed to that. It's something to bear in mind, that sometimes the protocols that are given need to be thought of in the context of our fisheries. That's a quick note on that. Thank you.
All right, great. I'm not seeing any more questions or comments.
Yeah, Jesus.
Sorry
about that.
Can you
Thank you very
identify
much.
yourself before you speak, and then we take your question, please?
Norman Norris from Dominica.
Norman Norris from Dominica. I want to say hello also to Peter and June. Great presentations by them. But a subject matter I didn't get much from this morning was that of insurance, which is significant because you can do all what you can by yourself, and in the end, it might not meet the needs. So I was wondering if we have any, we know a lot is being done, by CRFM, CNFO, and all the other bodies here. But the whole idea is that, looking at boating and personal insurance, is critical because we cannot continue to have hurricanes more frequent every other and just go about, asking people for money, that kind of a thing. It wouldn't work at all. So the whole idea, I think, that has been said is that insurance really should be mainstream, in the fishery sector, mainstream insurance in the fishery sector. So I was wondering maybe if June would be able to just add a piece of bit to that, because that is significant. We can only do so much, but as a collective body organization, it can reduce it and make it much, much, much easier. Yeah. So again, thanks much for everything. Great job, Peter and June and Team CRFM. Thanks.
Right. So thank you, Norman. Good to hear you and see you. Right. So in terms of insurance, it's getting a little bit easier these days, thanks, that fishers are able to get insurance coverage. It used to be almost impossible, but times and things have changed, and we're very happy that locally fishers are getting access to insurance. At the first presentation we had, I think we had somebody from the insurance company, and they had explained all there was to know about being insured as a fisher. So I think we probably need to make that available again on our website, on CRFM website, so that fishers can access that, so that they know what is available. We also have at the regional, national level, the CRIF insurance, and Peter can speak more about that. We work together with that insurance entity to ensure that fishers can get a payout. CRIF, course, yes. So I think I will just ask Peter to talk, because I see people mentioning something later. So Peter, go ahead with the CRIF insurance thing.
Well, CRIF and course is at a national level. They're sovereign policies. I don't think they address Norman's concern as such. One of the things is that the coast is a facility that allows for some funds to come into the sector as a result of events, and not necessarily hurricanes, but events. And that is something that's negotiated and worked out. A number of our countries are currently looking at it. It's not a thing where there's an amount of money that goes directly to the fishers out of coast. So really and truly, there is still a need for us to see how at the national level, at a more local level, that some sort of insurance, one-on-one as it were. The important thing is for fishers to take the risk. Adrian alluded to that. The risk is a funny thing. What I mean by the risk is that the risk that you may be paying insurance and nothing happen, and then that money is there. But in the event that something does happen, you have your insurance. Very often people are scared to spend money when they cannot see an immediate return, and that's why people shy away from insurance. I just want to say that the sovereign type insurances that CRIF and Coast provide are not sufficient, in my humble opinion. If you're expecting the fisherman to get something in his pocket, he has got to take it upon himself, like I think Adrian alluded to see how they can make use of other insurance mechanisms around, rather than that big lump sum national level thing. That's just my quick thinking on that. It's back to the question of pointing a finger and having three pointing back at you. We've got to ensure that we as fishers are going to take it upon ourselves, just like a homeowner will do, a boat owner should do, just as a car owner should do, a boat owner should do, a gear owner should do. Take it upon yourself to go through this aspect of risk management, which means you reach out, see a company that's willing to give you the rates that are comfortable so that you can ensure. We can't always be dependent. I remember over 20 or 30 years ago, there was an attempt at a group insurance for some of the countries in the Eastern Caribbean. And the challenge with it was that not enough people were contributing to the group insurance, and so when things happened, there was not much that could accrue, because the thing about group insurance is, for example, is the more the merrier, and that didn't happen. So there is a history, but like June has said, things are improving, and I see the most honorable Andre Kong has his hand up, so I don't know whether the facilitator will want to give him a chance before we move into the next part of this exercise.
Just before we do that, though, before we allow Mr. Kong to chime in, I just want to piggyback off of Peter's comment in terms of capacity. It's not so much that well, he's mostly right in that things like insurance is something that Fisheries is not going to do, because you buy insurance, nothing happens for 3 years, and you think, consider wasted money. But what we're trying to do now is have sufficient fishers, make the noise, because insurers and other institutions will not be minded to deal with one person here, one person there, in isolation. So as a collective and as a body, you have more influence, right? Even with rates, you have more influence, and that, I think, is the way that we, the direction that we should begin to go in, and it's something that we're trying to push here, and even at the regional level. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Mr. Kong, can you, we're running out of time. I'll give you the floor to present your question, comment. Just bear in mind, if you could give it briefly, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will try my utmost best. And brevity is not one of my virtues, but I'll try.
Definitely not.
Okay, Your Majesty. Excellent, of course, as always. Excellent presentation, and CRFM again blazing the flag on the trail. Let me just quickly, in terms of the insurance thing, well, I'm the former Director of Fisheries of Jamaica for a long time. I have not succeeded in this, but maybe we could look at this. I am of the opinion that government should assist the fishers in the insurance facility by subsidy. I am of the opinion that what would work is a group insurance that is tied to licensing. In other words, every fisher must mandatory have an insurance scheme facilitated towards assisting them during their time of need, and this should be subsidized by government. Of course, one will look at small-scale artisanal fishers for full subsidy, and perhaps you would not provide that to large-scale artisanal fishers. But just to juggle the mind on a system that I think can work. With regards to the early warning system, and listen very carefully, and I hear some excellent things, but I would like to point out and suggest that the early warning mechanism should focus on vulnerable areas and high-risk areas in terms of distance from the shore. This is something that I'm not seeing in most of these bulletins. In other words, secure your equipment. But I think something to say, look, this hurricane is a category 4. Its trajectory is X. People on the south coast of Jamaica, make sure you move all your things them 500 feet away from the shore. As simple as that. And of course, I'm not going to go through the whole issue of facilitating that, providing the assistance, facilitating areas where these important equipment can be moved. So all of that is involved. But I would like to recommend a look at that. Another thing that I want to recommend is the cost-benefit analysis of assisting and facilitating fishers and other vulnerable groups to prepare themselves. For instance, in Jamaica, there are thousands and thousands of traps on the south coast of Jamaica. The cost of leaving them there is significant. June mentioned some of it, but we're talking about destruction of the ecosystem, loss of the gear, ghost fishing, and dislocation. It would be good to determine what would be more beneficial. Would the government provide assistance to the fishers, so that they can go and retrieve these things? it might end up much more cheaper for the country to do that than to try and scramble and find how many millions and millions and millions of dollars to assist the fishers to recoup. The last thing that I would probably mention, one of the speakers, the fishers, mentioned hurricane moorings. I think this is a critical thing that we need to look at. These things need to be strategically developed and placed. For instance, a storm is passing on the south coast of Jamaica and not on the north. And the north is far more safer. What kind of assistance is there to relocate vulnerable vessels from the south coast to the north coast? And then again, the whole issue of protocols and mechanism in place to manage these areas, because sometimes, we don't understand the carrying capacity of the area. Some vessels might be of different size, and these hurricane moorings are not ideal for the type of vessels. So some kind of strategic, organized system, and perhaps we might need to look at special hurricane moorings for the fishery sector. I don't know. But we need to look at it because the boating community we have different type of vessels, including Coast Guard vessels. So we need to develop that and manage all of that. So in a nutshell, of course, I have much more to say, but I know time is short. So I just want to put those points for discussion and consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have a segment here for the moderated discussion. I see a hand up, Mr. Gavin. In 1 minute, I'll give you 1 minute if you can express yourself. And so after that, we'll then go into the moderated discussion. Our time is going past as scheduled. So if you can, 1 minute.
Okay, good afternoon. Are you hearing me?
Yes, Gavin.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. The first thing, as Mr. Kang just mentioned, our minister proposed that solution there for the insurance, where the government will be looking to initiate payment for insurance, a minimum payment where the fishers and farmers can upgrade their parametric insurance. The removal of the vessels, I will say, for burial was well executed in Jamaica at that time, where we had minimal, I think we had less than 10 vessels, RTs damaged. Necessary move from the area and take now to sea into safer areas. So we had about less than 10 vessels damaged in Jamaica for hurricane burial. So the thing about it is that I will agree and encourage that the early warning system is something which is a part of this procedure. And as presented, that how for the fishers to secure their vessels when they have removed them and the gear. So yes, I thank you for the presentation. It was very good, and I will be using the material going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll now turn over to our main partner for today's webinar from the CRFM, Ms. Adeli Ramos. The time is yours.
Thank you so much, Denise. It seems like we've already started the moderated discussion.
Yep.
Because a lot has been said along the line of our topic for this discussion, having to do with confronting disaster risk in an era of increased threat from storms and hurricanes. So we love the engagement. Thank you all very much for your input so far, and a special thanks to the presenters. So first, I want us to look at what the forecast is for this 2025 Atlantic hurricane season. And according to NOAA, National Hurricane Center in Miami, they have forecasted that this will be an above normal hurricane season. Now, what I learned while I was a journalist, and I had a very close relationship with our meteorologists here, is that they always stress that it takes only one strike to cause untold devastation. And we saw that last year with Hurricane Beryl, which came quite early in the season. So thankfully, the risk this year is not as high. Last year, it was 85% above normal probability. This year, it's 60%. And we're looking at 13 to 19 named storms, 6 to 10 hurricanes, and 3 to 5 major hurricanes. So we see the names there, and it starts off with Andrea and ends with Wendy. So, like I said, look what it looked like in 2023, where it was only a 30% chance of having an above normal hurricane season. And then in 2024, we saw that increase drastically to 85%. And the forecast was pretty good because they had projected that we would see 17 to 25 named storms. We saw 18. It was within that range on the lower end. However, when it came to hurricanes, they forecasted 8 to 13. We were on the higher end at 11. And in major hurricanes, we saw 5, which was within that range. So we've heard a lot about the word risk. And what I want us to crystallize is what those specific risks are. And I want to ask, because Peter addressed it a lot. Sorry? Okay. Yes. So Peter talked a lot about risk and the whole framework that exists regionally and at the national level to address these risks. But in reality, can you specify, can you elaborate based on what we've seen in the recent years, what are those top 3 priority risks that we need to confront in this era? Peter?
Thank you. I had my hand up for another reason, but I can segue into your question. But I want to make my point that we need to start considering what is normal. I think we have some new norms that have grown with climate change and the other things that increase chances of major events. And so the norm, the 1 in 100-year type of storm, is more frequent probability right now. So I think we need to start looking at redefining the norm. And above normal means something else different to what it meant 20 years ago. So that's where I'm starting off. In terms of risk, from where I see it, I think June's presentation kind of pointed us towards the risk factors. You have risk consequent upon storm surge. You have risk consequent upon increased winds. You have risk consequent upon flooding. Adrian's slides showed that very, very clearly. So these, I think, are the main risk factors that we see. When I referred to risk earlier, I was talking about the risk of doing nothing, essentially, because the context at that time was insurance. And so maybe that is another thing we need to consider also. What are the consequences of doing nothing? And the risk of doing nothing is as important a risk as the physical and the physical risk factors that come into play. That's my quick response, unprepared response to your question, Adele.
Thank you, Peter. So on another point, we've also addressed the issue of vulnerabilities, especially with regards to our coastal fishing communities. And one of the things that we see evolving in our region is marine spatial planning, or integrated spatial planning that involves both the marine space and the land space, the blue economy and the green economy. What work or what is the status of the mapping of vulnerabilities across our key communities across our member states? And to what extent is there support being provided to do that sort of vulnerability mapping and feed them into your national emergency management organizations, as well as the support entities, other government entities, civil society that mobilize support for these communities to address disaster risk?
Given the silence, I will jump in just because I hate the sound of silence so much. Essentially, as far as I'm concerned, the people to answer that are the NEMOs, because they will be better able, and maybe some other fisheries departments. The question of whether or not we build risk factors into our spatial plans is a very important one. I think it is important that with marine spatial planning, a number of countries, for example, the OECS countries in their revised ECROP, the oceans policy, have spoken about marine spatial planning as one of the underlying approaches. The discussion on the blue economy brings in the question of marine spatial planning. In fact, the BECLME project, which is being executed through the CRFM Secretariat, is looking at marine spatial planning. But I don't know to what extent we have been actually building risk and vulnerability into it. We've been looking at it mainly, as far as I know, we've been looking at it mainly in terms of usage of the marine and coastal space. But I think your question begs a further one, and that is, to what extent are we building risk reduction and vulnerability into the idea of marine spatial planning for the blue space and for the blue economy? And that's a very important question. I don't know whether Gavin from Jamaica or anybody there, Ian from Antigua, if he can jump in terms of what's happening at the national level.
Yes. Any of our member states want to chime in on that?
Pete, could you repeat that? You broke off your Pete's.
Yes, Peter, can you repeat for Dr. Bellamy?
Yeah, I was asking what is being done in terms of marine spatial planning at the national level to incorporate issues related to disaster risk reduction and vulnerability in terms of the use of the marine space, especially from the fisheries sector.
We're not hearing you, Doc.
Well, I guess it must be my internet because you really breaking up. But I think the question is, are we planning to
Doc, I think it's your internet.
or that stuff?
We're not hearing you. So I would recommend that you just, if you could please type it in the chat, and then we could convey your response to the audience, because it's breaking up, it's coming in intermittently. And while you do that, I'm just going to move on to my next question, since we're close to time right now. And I want to direct this one at Mr. Laroda. Early warning systems. How well do they work for fishers in the time of emergency?
That is, hello, hi, yes, that is a somewhat of a good question, but I guess we can interpret, and what we do interpret an early warning system is when our weather departments issue either a tropical storm or storm systems, those alerts, and that is what we rely on. The availability of information on hurricane paths and and areas that are going to be impacted is so good now, and it has been built up so much now. They're almost basically 90% accurate most times. So that's what we rely on. But while I'm on this, I want to mention that here in the Bahamas, our organization, ECFA, we are partnering with an organization out of the U.S. where we're collecting water temperature data. Because as we all know, hurricanes are built off of warm water temperature, warm water. So we've been collecting 1 year now, 12 months, going into the second year, we've been collecting water temperature data. And we, at some point, are expecting to roll out this program throughout the Caribbean region to better be able to provide hurricane forecasting. And the waters here in the Bahamas, we were fortunate last year because of the prevalence of Sahara dust. The water here in the Bahamas always average sometimes 94, 98, 96 degrees, which is very hot, perfect for hurricane development. But again, relying on our Met offices, I think those systems work well. Where we are lacking is not so much in the Bahamas, but in other territories, is the ability to transfer this information to fishers when they're out at sea. Fishers are still relying on the cell phone devices, those kinds of things to be able to stay in touch. And we have to move away from that. We have to move away from that. It's a work in progress, and it may take a little longer, but that's where we are in terms of early warning systems.
Great, thank you so much. I want to move on to June.
I want to step in here, please, as a fisher, Winsbert Harry from St. Vincent.
Hi, Winsbert, go ahead.
Another lady from Dominica as well.
Well, as a fisherman, you know that St. Vincent was really devastated last year by Hurricane Beryl. But what we face within the fishing countries, even in the Windward Islands, is that the early warning system needs to be upgraded to fishing communities. I think most of the stuff is not reaching the fishing communities where most of the fishers resonate, and the community is first responder to any major disasters. And most of our shorelines is below sea level. And what we do not have is a proper protection and safe harbor for fishing boat and fishing fleet. I think we need to see how then we could have notice board around in these communities to notify the fisher folks and fisher folks family. We need to strengthen a communication strategy among fishers, the fisheries division, and fishing community. I feel that is very lacking in terms of how we translate the information, because I think that persons are getting mixed up with a tropical depression, a tropical wave, and a hurricane, and fishers intend to take risks. And some of us find ourselves in difficulty because we do not understand the difference between tropical wave, tropical depression before it turns into a hurricane. A disturbance passing through in the area. I think it's something that we really need to work on. We need to create some app, work with SEDIMA to get the information out as early as possible. But I think we need to really see how we can focus in the communities and go back to Peter's presentation earlier. We're talking about the common fisheries policy. This has been a long decade, and they're looking at disaster risk. I do not know what is taking so long for the countries within individual countries to have dialogues now with this policy. I think it's long overdue, and it is on the books, it is on the table, but nobody aware of all these policies that you were mentioning, Mr. Peters, more than who attend meeting. So we need to really beef up our fisheries advisory committee, our fisheries board, because most of the countries does not have a fisheries advisory committee that could liaison with the minister and then to liaison with the fishing community in terms of how we get all the warning system and tie it in with the Met Office. Back to you, Sister Chair, and thanks for the opportunity for giving my input.
Thank you, Winsbert. Just one question though. Have there been drills for fishers in your community?
There has been no drill. It's only the Red Cross who is trying to do drills for persons within the community. So this is why I'm saying we need to have community engaged, not only the fisher folk, but persons in the community conducting drills, because they are the first responders. And I think that is something need to be done in individual country. But there has been none.
Thank you, Winsberg. Diana, please go ahead.
Hi, good day. My name is Diana De Gallery. I'm from Dominica, the Fisheries Division. I'm a Fisheries Liaison Officer. Okay, I'm not sure if that was mentioned, but I heard heard about the aquaculture and the fishers. But right now, a lot of persons are entering into the mariculture sector where they do CMOS farming. So I did not hear anything about that in respects to like precautions before hurricanes. What do you do before hurricane when you have a mariculture farm where you have your CMOS? Is there anything that you should do before and after? I didn't hear anything about that.
Yes, correct. So we didn't specify mariculture. We had some general guidance around aquaculture. And that, Diana, is a gap that needs to be filled because we know that mariculture is just now really blooming across the region. We have, like in the case of Belize, that's focusing heavy on mariculture and the legislative framework. So it would be a very good exercise for us to zoom in on the mariculture aspects and then build out some guidance specifically for the mariculture subsector. But Peter is our expert on that, so I will hand over to him.
Why you keep calling me expert on that? Huh?
You are.
No, I'm not the expert. I'm just a person that's trying to do it because nobody else was doing it. Okay, but let's be serious. Yes, Diana, you are quite right. It is important that we give consideration to that. Some of the things to do are self-evident. I mean, in some instances, in a lot of instances, for example, you're talking about CMOS, last I knew, it's being done on ropes and that sort of thing. So it's a matter of pulling them in. But maybe you are right. What we need to do is to probably start to look at some of the best practices in that regard. And I think we will follow up on that. You, I know, have some thoughts on the issue, so you could share your thoughts on that with us, and we can probably see how we can start to provide some guidance. I know Andre Kong has his hand up again, so I don't know whether he wants to weigh in on that, but Madam Facilitator, it's up to you to decide whether to call him or not.
Well, definitely. This will be your last comment, though, because we're a little out of time, but we certainly want to hear from Mr. Kong. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. And well, okay, summarize. So I just want to underscore the importance of assistance, government assistance, and regimes and policy that will assist the fishers. In regards to spatial planning, of course, we need to broaden that. It's not just marine spatial planning, but spatial planning in general. I would like to suggest, because we are all very, very small in terms of land, and you can't separate them sometimes. And with regards to, remember, there's riverine fisheries in countries like Guyana and Jamaica, which again, so you have to add that aquatic space. In terms of vulnerabilities and risk, you have to bring it down to the operational level and the community level and the fishing ground level. That is where we need to go. The macro picture not helping at all. Yes, you can get some good advice and thing from that, but we have to drill it down with regards to the mapping and the vulnerabilities and the risk. And of course, it is also activity specific. It depends on what you're doing. So, in other words, what has to happen is that every single community aquaculture facility, depending on where it is, where the fishing grounds are, we need to go through that exercise. And that depends on the trajectory of the hurricane and the strength of the hurricane. So there are all of these permutations and combination. It is not going to be exact science, but this is where we have to go. So there needs to be a policy and an investment by the government to assist vulnerable communities at high risk and to determine how best to respond and to cope with these events given the specificity of the event that is going to bestow upon them. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much. All very excellent points. And I want to underscore what you said with regards to the need for integrated spatial planning, not just looking at the marine space, even though for most of our countries in the Caribbean, there's more marine than land space, but it's all very interconnected. The rivers run into the sea, right? And so that's very critical. So I want to thank all of you who've contributed to this engagement in this discussion, and I will hand back to Denise. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Adele. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining. And I enjoyed the discussions, the back and forth with comments and in real life insight into what we really would need in the region. I am very grateful for that. Thank you for joining us for another exciting session in our Preparing for the 2025 Caribbean Hurricane Season webinar series. This is just one of 5. Our last one, our final webinar will be next week, Friday. And the topic for then will be disaster response and recovery. So I would like to invite everyone who is on this platform in this webinar to also join us for that segment. There will be more insightful discussions, and there will be sharing of practical tips for those in the farmers and fishers and food processors, right? So before we go, we would like to give special thanks to our partner agencies. And for today, we have our main partner being the CRFM. I thank you, and I thank you, the team. You've done an excellent job. Thank you so much. We'd like to also thank CAFSA, CARDI, FAO, AICA, and SDIMA as well. They're our partners in this for their continued collaboration and commitment to building resilience in our region and providing valuable contribution to making this webinar, the series of webinars, possible and successful. We appreciated all the questions, all the comments. They were very, very important for us to give clarity to the issues, to provide some guidance as well. Note that the recording of this session, along with key resources, will be available on CARICOM's YouTube channel. So please, if you think you missed something here, you can go there and you pick it up. I also note that the CRFM has also indicated that they also have a link to that you can also access it. But if you're interested in all the past webinars we've done, CARICOM YouTube channel has them all, right? We look forward to having you with us again in the upcoming session, which is our final session next week. So please join in. And until then, stay safe and stay prepared. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denise, for such an excellent job.
Thank you very much, Denise, and thank you everybody, all the people who participated, those who asked questions, those who have not yet dropped their hand, and Mr. Kong, thank you very, very much.
And
See you
thank
next
you,
time.
Peter.